Hello and welcome to the Peak Podcast. My name is Kyle Nelson. This is my good friend co-host, Mr. Eli Libby. What's going on, my man?
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.
I've been telling you about this podcast.
You have.
We've met twice prior to this podcast,
Yeah.
so it should be really fun.
I'm excited for it.
Really
You've
fun.
really hyped it up. And
Well, he's the man. He's the man.
combo.
Heck yeah.
Besides that, just want to make sure if you know and if you don't about the Peak Podcast, we talk to business owners, coaches, executives, and really try to best understand what their aha moment was. What was that peak moment when they found they knew what was next in their life and they wanted to bring it on. And we're also the co-founders of Peak Fulfillment, where we do self-guided solo retreats where you dive in, get some clarity, and go over self-reflection, self-discovery, and vision crafting. But without further ado, let's bring on Mr. Mathew Lehnig. He is the VP C-Suite Executive at Accelerate. Matthew, what's going on, my man? Welcome to the Peak Podcast.
It's a pleasure. It's great to be here, gentlemen. I'm excited.
Stoked you're here. We're finally making this happen, and thank you for your service as well. Appreciate that, man.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Well, let's get this thing kicked off. We're in the holiday spirit, so we always just start with a little icebreaker. So, favorite Christmas movie, Matthew? What do you got?
Oh my goodness, that's putting me on the spot there. So I always go back, to the one that I think everybody knows, where there was a young Collie Coughlin, and he gets stuck at home, and you have two individuals that are consistently trying to rob the house, and he is just, one step ahead of them the entire way. And I think that's probably one of my favorites, because as a young kid, I was kind of like that. I grew up in a neighborhood that was a little rough around the edges, and so we were always on point, keeping things focused consistently, and my head was always on a swivel. And so when that movie came out and I saw it for the first time,
Love it.
And so the family, I've got 4 young kids, and so that's one of the favorites that we always watch, and we have a great laugh because of that movie.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, let's jump in, man.
I thought you were going to jump in and say your favorite movie.
Oh, you want me to say mine?
Go for it.
Oh, okay. I'm always a National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. That's always, well, you and I have the same one. Yeah, I mean, that's next to nothing. 4 Christmases is my backup. I love that movie. I get a lot of laughs out of that one. What about you?
Yeah,
Same.
Exact ones, yes.
Same too?
Same too, yep. Those are good ones, classics.
Heck yeah. Well, Matthew, thanks again for being here. Excited to chat. So walk our audience through your background. I know there's so much to cover. We've got a limited 20-minute podcast here, but give us the cliff notes of your background.
So I grew up, in the most southern beach town of Imperial Beach, which is right on the border of Tijuana, Mexico.
Okay.
So it was about 8 miles away from the Navy SEAL teams, which is now actually in Imperial Beach, probably about a block and a half of where I was actually raised.
Wow.
And so it's quite interesting. If I go back a little bit further, that base, which is where the SEAL teams are now, and how I got to that location as a very young man, was my grandfather was actually known as the father of cryptology. And so he was one of the guys that was very instrumental in breaking the Japanese code. He's the one that was running the organization that was there where the SEAL teams are now, as a telecommunication case. And that's where they taught all the cryptologists. And so he was the last one in command of that, and then established the plans and moved it to Pensacola, Florida. And so that's kind of how we got into that location, was because of that. I didn't know this till many years later. And so with that, that was kind of where, when I was about 10 years old, my grandfather kind of took me under his wing and really started to mentor me, because I didn't really have a father figure. My parents were divorced at a very young age, but he was always at the house. He was always kind of there. And so finally, when we were of age, he started to kind of teach us those leadership fundamentals that he had learned in the military, and kind of fostered that in with me. So that was kind of one of the earlier aha moments. And then when I would say I was about 12 or 13 years old, a gentleman moved right next door to us who was a SEAL. And so I started to kind of watch what he was doing, started asking questions. And then around 15 years old, he started to mentor me. And so I kind of knew I was moving in that direction.
Yeah.
But wasn't really sure. And then within a very short period of time, both my mother and my grandfather, who were really kind of the two rocks in my life, they both passed away within a 6-month period. And so I kind of, from that moment on, I was like, literally the next day, I went and I joined the military. I was actually in college at the time. I was a little bit older, so I was in my 20s. And so I I dropped out of college and I went and joined the military that day. And then I was on kind of a program where I had a little bit of time before I went in. And so then my uncle Patrick kind of stepped in as that leadership role. And he was already very well known within the leadership development industry.
Okay.
And so he kind of came in and started mentoring me through the process. He's actually on our board of advisors now with the company of Accelerate. And so, it's always this full circle. And so he started to kind of mentor me through that process as I was going through the training pipeline and so on and so forth. So I went into boot camp, went into A school, and then went right into the SEAL teams where I had a 30-year career. Part of that was enlisted, for the first 17 years where I was consistently deployed, 3 combat tours. And then finally they told me, you need to take a break. And I said, well, I'm not ready to take a break. And they're like, well, we're going to give you one. So I said, well, if you do that and you send me over to a training command, then I'm going to commission. And at the time I was being groomed to be a master chief, which is the highest senior enlisted within the military. And so they didn't believe that I was actually going to commission. And so I got over there, and first year I was in there, I put in a commission, picked it up the following year, and then put it on in 2010. So for the next 12 years, I ended up training a lot of great individuals, and I ended up at probably one of the most clandestine training organizations within Naval Special Warfare. And I was actually going to be elevated to take over as one of the command warrants, but 30 years for me was long enough.
Yeah.
And around 2018, I knew that there was a possibility that I was going to get out at 30 years. And so at that point, I got with my uncle Patrick, and we really kind of set up a really good transition plan. And so I went back and got my undergrad and graduate level degrees, one in leadership development, and then one in strategic leadership with an emphasis on business analytics. And then I went getting tons of certifications, project management, change management, Lean Six Sigma, agile methodology, so on and so forth. Got some great mentors along the way. My uncle Patrick connected with me some incredible men who I'm still very in touch with now, and coach some of the people that they send to me as they're coming out of the military. And so from that perspective, I kind of started to realize, okay, there's other opportunities out there. And these gentlemen started to show that to me. And then Brent, who is the CEO of Accelerate, I trained him in the early 2000s at the time, not knowing that I was going to lead him and several other people downrange.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Which we did. So we did our 2003 deployment together in combat. He did a couple more deployments as well as I did. And then he got out and started to build and sell multiple companies. So very successful entrepreneur. Wrote several books. One of those was Taking Point Leadership, which is what the organization was founded upon in the beginning. And then he also wrote another book called Embrace the Suck, which you may have heard of. It's very popular. And so anyway, we started talking, and he knew exactly what I had done a lot of the times because I was really a curriculum developer, trainer, and leader. And so I was developing, training, and leading. I think I probably mentored and trained over 2,500 SEALs in my entire time in career-wise. So I already had a really strong coaching ability, mentorship ability, and so on. And so he really kind of offered me the best out of all of the other organizations. I mean, I had a plethora of organizations that came out and offered me positions, but his was great because it led me to be able to be a keynote speaker, author for Forbes and several other magazines, co-authoring a lot of other things. And so on and so forth. And so I went that route, and it has been incredible. And he's an incredible mentor because he's been there, done that as far as, in the industry in corporate America. And so he's been a great mentor, and he's helped me really kind of through that transition. And then I went to an organization called the Honor Foundation, which is a 16-week executive transition course that helps military soft move from military into the private sector. And it kind of helps you out. You do Simon Sinek's why. So you kind of really redefine your purpose as an individual, what you want to do. You take a lot of assessments and things like that. And it really kind of hones in. For me, it was really simple. Like I already kind of knew I was going to get into consulting. I already knew I was an entrepreneur and already had that going on. And it just really solidified it. And that's exactly what came out of it. A lot of connections. They help you build out your platforms, build your brand, do a lot of great things, connections. And so at that point, I already after that, I was like, okay, called Brent and said, man, I'm ready to do that. And even though COVID was an interesting time in the military, because of COVID, we never lost any of our leave. And usually what will happen is if after you get over 60 days of leave, if you don't use it by the end of the year, you lose it, right? Yep. Well, I didn't lose it. So I had almost 6 months of leave saved up.
Wow.
I just never took time off.
Yeah.
So I actually decided, okay, I'm going to get out. I got my family set up here in Houston where I'm at now in July. I went back for a couple of weeks, solidified all the stuff that I need to, and then I went on full leave, until December when I actually retired. So I was getting, military pay. Sure. And then at the same time, I was also getting paid by the organization that I was working for, and then wasn't fully on staff yet because it was kind of like retainer for those months for me to kind of just come in, learn the organization, understand it, side by side with the CEO, working with companies, organizations, everything from, big tech companies to leadership in, organizations like, excuse me, my mind just kind of went blank there for a second, but construction companies and everything else in between, right? So it was just a wide variety of organizations, a lot of leadership. And what I found through that was really kind of like, okay, now I understand all of those leadership, the tacit and the acumen and all of those things that I've learned and how they correlate really with industry. And so for me, it was a very simple and easy transition. And then, and then of course, my Uncle Patrick was fostering, leadership development through that process, connecting me with all of other individuals and so on and so forth. And then eventually, I would say about 8 months ago, we decided that, we were going to move more into an AI and SaaS integrated organization. And we kind of had a little bit of a different framework because we didn't have to start from scratch because we already had a very solid structure from the organization that we already came from, which was Taking Point Leadership. We had a lot of companies, a lot of organizations that we were working with. We had built a strong reputation. And so for us, we're already doing a lot of capital. We've got a lot of money coming in. And so, we started moving into the seed round. We got some investors, started working with engineers, and the transition from a consulting firm into an AI and SaaS was, though it was, a little bit different, but we are way ahead of most organizations because of that. And because we both had a little bit of time in industry in AI and SaaS. So that also came to effect, plus great mentors. We've got great board members that lead us in the right directions. And so, yeah, it has been an incredible journey. And then the last thing I'll say is in that I've also become an executive coach for a lot of my brothers that are in special operations that are coming out. So now I'm an executive coach for the Honor Foundation, which I also coach. And then I help out, Beyond the Brotherhood, which is another great foundation. And then now I just got accepted and I'll be on the board of Owners in Honor, which is an organization that helps individuals come from the military, trains them in entrepreneurship, and then helps them build and create small businesses for wherever they're located at in whatever city and country that they're in. So just phenomenal. It's been a phenomenal ride.
Man,
amazing career.
Amazing career.
Thank you so much.
And then I just got on. I'll be at some point here in the next year the editor in chief of two really magazines that are just starting to explode. So I'm really excited about that as well.
We'll have to talk about that in the post chat because I'm really curious what those are. Yeah. I want to zoom back real quick. I have a question. Is that cool if I jump in? Early in your breakdown right there, you talked about when you were like 13 or 15, there was this neighbor that was next to you that was a SEAL. Mm-hmm. What was the aha moment, or how did he rub off on you? Like, what was so inspiring about this individual that put you? I mean, that person maybe has led you down to where you are today. Like, if you did not have that neighbor, you may not be where you are today. So
connecting the dots, right?
It's connecting the dots. So what was it? So why was he so impactful? What was it about him that like drew you to him?
Yeah, so there was two aspects. So my mom actually worked for NCIS, right, in the military, and so she'd been around a lot of the team guys, and back then a lot of the team guys just get in trouble, right? So that's how she knew some of them. But at the same time, she kind of also knew how I was as a young man, right? So I was the guy. If you said don't do it, I would do it, right? So I've always had this I've always had this part of me that's always been trying to be very driven and always. And so when I walked out one day and I'd met him for the first time, he was actually packing a parachute out in his front lawn, right? And so he was on the experimental jump team at the time, right? And he started to tell me some things that I just resonated with. He's like, I'm jumping out of airplanes from 20,000 feet on oxygen. Yeah. And so I was like, my goodness, that sounds amazing. And then of course he's like, yeah, and we dive and we jump and we shoot and we basically get paid to do incredible things, right? And then he was also very straightforward in the fact that he said on the flip coin of that, there is also possibilities of wars and combat and everything else. So, so you have to have, a lot with the good and all of the things in training you do, and there's also that aspect of it. And so that really intrigued me. And then, what was great about it was he left, right? And so I went into the SEAL teams, and then my very first deployment into Southwest Asia, he was actually the ops warrant of that command. And so here I am walking across the quarterdeck. He sees me and I see him, and he looks at me for a second. He's like, what the heck am I doing here? And I was like, well, I'm on my first platoon. And he's like, get out of here. And so, we were able to kind of have that conversation, and it was an incredible moment. And then he was actually went all the way out to be CW04, and then was actually the very first SEAL to be asked to be a CW05. He declined because he already had a GS position waiting. And so as I was getting ready to move into that warrant position, he was already at the command that I was at. So of course I had lots of conversations with him about, warrant officer community. And he was really also led me to become a warrant officer and an officer in our community. So again, it was just, the cycle just continued. We're a very small organization. I mean, there's only, I think there's 10,000, but only 2,300 active, at one time. And so everybody tends to know one another. And of course, like me, I'd been going back into training and recycling. And so I was always meeting the next group of leaders. And so being impactful, mentoring them. And so that has also been a blessing throughout my career, just being able to lead a lot of guys and really push guys and give them momentum to when I leave, that they're ready to go and continue on with the work that needs to be done within naval special warfare.
Man, phenomenal.
Yeah.
Jeez.
What the transition from going from, the 30 years that you served to civilian life, and because from what I know, when you're serving, it's very structured, it's high alert, you kind of always know what's happening next, but at any moment things can change and you have to move quick. Having that kind of mindset and bringing it to a lifestyle where you kind of have the freedom to have unstructured or whatever you want. What was that like? Do you still live your life very similar to how you did?
No, not at all. Actually, I mean, I'm okay. So I do have OCD, so I'm very structured in the way that I do things. That has helped me a lot, throughout my career in the military. So again, like I said, I mean, I knew that I might get out. So I started that transition very early. A lot of people, they do it like 6 months out or, almost out the door. I was like, I've seen guys do it right.
Yep.
Guys do it wrong. And so that's why I went back for the undergrad. And I went back for those things for a couple.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, I went back for a couple of reasons. The first is obviously I wanted to get those. I wanted to make sure that I understood organizational speak. And then I also wanted to be able to correlate what I did in the military in those areas, right? And what I found was there wasn't really a lot of differences. It was just people spoke differently. Like we have our entire different language in the military, and then corporate America has a different language. Once you're able to correlate those two and then move forward, it was very simple for me. And because I had a lot of I front loaded everything on the front end, so it paid dividends for me on the back end. And so as I started to transition, went through the Honor Foundation, they really kind of solidified what I already knew. And then I moved out into that. I mean, I was already, like I said, I had a paycheck coming from the military, but I also had a paycheck from the company. I was learning, I was being mentored. My grandfather my uncle Pat was mentoring me, became a part of our board. And so, being able to bring him in was even more incredible. And then of course, as you start to work with these companies, you start to realize the leadership philosophies, which is really just aligning purpose with action and then inspiring growth and innovation, was the same thing we do in the SEAL teams. And it's the same thing we do for a lot of the big organization and companies that we work for. Really just that alignment.
Sure.
So for me, it was a lot. Some people, it's not simple, and I get that. But for me, I did a lot of pre-prep before I got out. And then of course, I'm a very faith-based man, right? And so there's a lot of prayer in that as well. And so I'm one of those guys where if a door closes, I'm not worried about the door closing because I know another one will open.
Yep.
And one opens, I walk in, and the one that closed, I'm like, I don't even think about it anymore. So that's why when they came in and said, you want to be a coach? I'm like, sure. And then another organization is like, well, if you're coaching for them, it'd be great if you can coach for us. And then another guy's like, I saw you speak at the Honor Foundation. Here's what I do. I would love to be a board member. And I'm like, all right, let me pray about it. Sounds great. Of course I'm going to do it. Right. And so I found a lot of purpose, and also giving back to the community that has given me so much and connecting those guys. Because the reality is the leaders that are coming out of the military now, guys are coming in with, bachelor's degrees, leaving with masters and doctorates, so and of course they have these leadership skill sets that are incredible. They just need to learn how to speak the language. And so I'm able to coach them, teach them, and then connect them with the individuals that they need to be connected with in the organizations that they want to be connected with. And so I'm kind of that connector in chief, if you will. So that's that for me. Extraordinary.
Cool. That's awesome, Matt.
Yeah. Wow. So now I'm working for another organization where, I can't say their name because they haven't really accepted, but that is exactly what I'm going to be doing. They're starting a new program. It's another 501c where I'm going to bring some of those guys in, mentor them, and then connect them with the individuals in the organizations they want to be connected with. And so that's as I continue to build my network, which is great, but I'm also very selective because I want to know the individuals that are in my network. So that way I can connect individuals to those guys and I know them. And it isn't like, hey, so-and-so, we've only talked a few times. It's like, hey, I know you, you know me. Here's somebody I think would be a good fit for your company and your organization. Yeah. So that's another passion of mine on top of being, the VP and building out programs and just doing a lot of the things we are now in AI and SaaS and digging into that and working with our new platforms and our engineers. So it's 100 miles an hour, but I just love every part of it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
A lot going on.
You do. Yeah.
Well, as we kind of butt up to the end of this podcast, if there was one thing that you hope our audience can take away from this conversation that, you hope that is that impact, that piece that you really wanted to bring to this combo, what would it be?
Well, I just say, for me, it's just all about achieving that vision that you have and not letting anything stop you.
Amazing.
Right? So that's the one thing that I would leave people with, right?
Love it.
Always have to drive forward. And I always utilize this. You got to drive the needle forward every time and every chance. And don't let the things in your past hold you back. Always drive forward.
Yes, sir.
Love it, man.
People want to get connected with you, Mathew. Where would they find you?
So I'm on pretty much every single platform. They can hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on X. So I'm on all of those. Of course, they can go to our website, which is Accelerate AI, and check out our organization, check out our company. It's phenomenal, and it's only going to keep growing. It's going to be doing amazing things in 2025. That's for sure.
Amazing.
Mathew, thank you so much for blessing us with your time. It was really good to hear your story and the impact you're making. So appreciate you.
Appreciate you guys
so much, man.
See ya.
Phenomenal.
Oh my gosh.
Phenomenal background.
That was
unreal.
He had so much experience. But what's really cool is, when they make incredible impact with service members, but then they come and they use that experience.
Yes.
Everything they've learned. Yeah. So the amount of impact now is dominoes.
I know.
And just ripple effect.
Yep. All the people who's coaching. That was awesome.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Peak Podcast. If you want to follow us and join us on episodes just like this one and listen to awesome guests like Mathew, make sure to subscribe. Can't wait to have you along on the next episode of the podcast.
See you guys.